Welcome back, everyone, to Diamonds 2020. I am here right now with Becca, who is going to be teaching the next session. Welcome, Becca.
Sorry, it took me a little by surprise there because we've already talked, but hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Becca's going to be teaching about marriage in the middle of chronic illness, which is, I think, a very needed topic, but also good luck.
Sorry, I just noticed this is driving me nuts because it is uneven and not straight. Sorry, that was what that was, but we're going to go with it. But yeah, marriage and chronic illness. It's, we're going to see what we can do as far as talking about it. We'll see. I'm going to get this out of the way because it's annoying. There we go. Much better.
Okay. Well, I'll turn it over to you then.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, guys. So let me adjust this camera a little bit. I had plans for this talk today that were very detailed, outline, typed pages, all of that. You all have seen the study guide, at least I'm sure some of you have. We are going to still hit the things that are on the study guide today. However, some things happened last night and today that kind of, you know how you can just tell when God is putting something on your heart and saying, okay, no, this is what you need to do. This is the message I want you to share. It was one of those things where I've been stressing about this whole time, this entire week, literally. This is Friday now, since Saturday or Sunday. Excuse me. I have literally had a nonstop migraine, and I deal with, I'll get this out of the way at the beginning. This cold pack here I wear all the time because of not just migraines, but head pressure and trigeminal occipital nerve pain, facial pain, that kind of stuff. And I have to have cold on all the time. So that's what that is. And if you see me at any point during this talk, like close my right eye, which I don't know if it's mirrored to you. It's mirrored to me on my camera. But anyway, my right eye is the one that gets affected by my nerve pain the most. So I may start talking and do this. So just know that that's why I do it, and I'm not even conscious of it sometimes if the pain gets there. So last night, my husband Roger and I, which I'll tell you our story in just a minute, but to preface the stuff that happened last night, we had an evening, like an okay evening. Like I said, I've been dealing with a migraine and stuff all week. Literally, it's kept me in the bed in the dark, and it's also been pouring the rain for the past 24 hours. So as you all are aware, even people that don't deal with headaches regularly tend to get them when the pressure goes like that. But the bottom line is, we spent a little time together last night. We were able to watch the new Star Trek Picard premiere. That was awesome. But the overwhelming theme last night, and I know it was Satan trying to attack us, because what does Satan do when God's children try to speak on behalf? Think my words. What does Satan like to do to God's children? He likes to trip them up in every way he can, especially when it is the place where he can hurt the most. I don't know if that made any sense. I'm sorry. Basically, I got in this obsessive spiral last night, and I was talking to Roger, and I said, you know what? I feel completely worthless. I feel useless. I feel worthless. I'm a horrible wife. I can't do anything right. I can't do like anything around the house as far as keeping it ready. I don't deserve to do this talk tomorrow. I shouldn't be doing this because I suck at this. Sorry, I don't usually say that word just because I don't like it. But last night, that's what I was feeling like. I'm not good at this. Why did anybody ask me to talk about this? Because I feel like such a failure all the time when it comes to marriage and being a wife. And very, very long conversation summarized. Roger pointed out, he said, how did he say it? I'm sorry. This is probably going to happen a lot too. I lost my train of thought completely mid-sentence, but basically, you don't have to be a perfect person. Of course, we know perfect people don't exist, but like, you don't have to do every single thing perfectly to have a good relationship. And that was just a note there that I just wanted to add, because at 2:30 a.m., after we had a long conversation right before bed that was draining for him, I know, because when I get into those spirals, it's draining for anyone that is in the vicinity. And I woke up at 2:30 a.m. with probably the with a headache that was in the top 5 or top 10 most severely painful headaches I've felt. And I've had a headache for, what is today, the 24th? So 7 years and 4 days at least. I've had a headache every single day, and it was the worst, one of the top 10 worst ones that I've had. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have to talk at the conference later today, and I can't even open my eyes. So obviously I'm getting a little bit of relief right now, but that was something else that Roger also just mentioned this morning when he was getting ready to go to work. He said, I know God's going to work it out, because I know that you've got stuff that he, stuff, that's such a generic term, but you have a message that God, lays on your heart, and God just always, through the brain foggiest of people, he gets the message across. So I don't know who's going to need to hear any of this message. I don't know which parts you're going to hear that are going to be, the most important for you. Adjust this a little bit again. I'm not trying to get my masks in over there, but it will be crooked otherwise. Okay, whatever. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm gonna stop moving. I apologize. By the way, I don't have my wedding rings on because my knuckles get swollen, and I'm waiting to get a good chain. But I do have my wedding rings. They're right over there. I can see them in the joy box from here. They're right across the room. I do have them. I just didn't want you to think I didn't have them at all. Anyway, a little bit about our story to give you some context. But right before I get that into that, on the study guide, I wrote a few paragraphs at the beginning, just talking about in sickness and in health. And how often do you hear that phrase said? Like, if you've ever been to a wedding, there's a good chance you've heard it said. Even if the couple wrote their own vows, there's still a good chance that that was part of their own written vows. So, it's just, and if you've seen weddings or anything on TV or movies or whatever, it's just something we grow up hearing, at least in America, our whole lives. I would assume either that phrase or the equivalent is elsewhere as well. But in America, you grow up hearing it, like I said, on TV, in life, and it's this nice concept, like, oh yeah, people are getting married, they love each other. Of course, they're going to be together in sickness and in health, because you would marry someone if you're not going to want to be with them no matter what, right? Yeah, duh. Obviously, that's why we say for richer or for poorer. And my goodness, guys, with chronic illness, doesn't that one ring true as well? But for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. And it's just a phrase that we can take for granted far too often if we are healthy and or not struggling with any type of health issue. And I do want to say that loving someone in sickness and in health is not easy. It's super easy to love in health. All of us can love in health. Literally, that's super easy. Loving in sickness is pretty hard. Whether that's for the person who is, sorry, I keep hitting the mic, whether that's for the person who is chronically ill or for their spouse, it takes a toll. And we're going to talk more about the specific ways later, but just know it's something that we hear said so often that we take it for granted and think, okay, well, that's just implied if you're going to marry someone, then yeah, okay, in sickness and in health, there we go. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to put that out there because I just kind of wrote those paragraphs in the study guide. I never say kind of this much, by the way. I don't know where that came from, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there to talk about how the phrase is accepted as a given when people get married, and marriage being like I don't want to say the biggest way, because it's not everybody is meant to be married, but if God has marriage in his will for you, then it is like the biggest way that you can glorify God, by not just honoring him with the way that you all interact with each other in your marriage, but also by serving together at church, at home, online, wherever. It's sorry, I keep getting choked there. And I forgot the first part of what I was talking about, but guys, I heard that last year, and I remember seeing comments last year that people sometimes think it's relatable when the speaker gets brain fog because you all understand, but I really want to be able to get through this. So I apologize. I do not remember the thing that I just said, but I'm going to go ahead and get into our kind of background story and summarize that as quickly as I can before I get to other points. Roger and I have been dating since September 4th, 2007, which was my freshman fall semester in college. It was a few weeks into it, actually. And what's ironic about that date is it's the that date in 2007 was the 3-year anniversary of one of the treatment centers that I went to for anorexia, which more on that later briefly. But it was just a date that used to be kind of bittersweet to me because I had those memories that I can't really explain in a condensed form here. But if you've ever been in a place like that, it's just such a mix of memories. And then Roger, I started dating. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. Like literally, this is sweet. This is awesome. And he's super sweet. So there you go. It's awesome. And for years, I just had that like bittersweet feeling. But I'm proud to say now that September 4th is only sweet to me now. And this is 2020. So we will have been dating or have been together for, oh, I can't do math. Oh, 12 plus 1 years. I can't say that number out loud. I'm sorry. That's OCD for you. But we've been together that long, and we've been married since June 18th, 2011. Now, I went to college just a couple hours away from here in my hometown, 2.5 hours, maybe 2:15 if I was driving. Sorry, Dad. But he was here in town here, and I would either drive home every other week or he would come to center. So we never went to we never went more than 2 or 3 weeks without seeing each other the entire 4 years I was in college. And throughout that time, I was still dealing with chronic illness, and we didn't know then everything that we know now as far as what's actually going on in my body. Like I was diagnosed at the time, as far as physical stuff goes, with juvenile idiopathic, meaning, we don't know why you have it, but you have it, arthritis. And it was just this, okay, in interest for the topic of today's thing, I have a lot of details like this on, a lot of details about all this stuff on our YouTube channel, which I'll make sure, I think it's on the guide, but the Lyme is Lame YouTube channel. We've talked about that kind of stuff in depth, but I want to talk about the relationship stuff here. So I just want to say that in college, I was I was still dealing with, chronic pain. I had been dealing with an eating disorder for a long time, since 2003. That's a battle I still face daily as well, even though I'm miles ahead of where I was back then. And OCD has been a lifelong battle. And then, of course, over the past several years, there have been a lot more physical things as the pieces have fallen together. But my point with going all the way back to when we first started dating was Roger knew that I had arthritis because one of his family members does as well, like juvenile arthritis. And he knew that I had an eating disorder. I don't know if he knew about OCD. He learned that very shortly if he didn't know about it at the beginning. But I say that to say that he went into our relationship, he came into it knowing that those things existed. Now, he had no idea to what extent they existed. And honestly, at the time, neither did I. And throughout the course of those 4 years, he worked more times than I can remember with my recovery mentor, contacting my friends who would talk to the counselor on our college campus, who would then call me in if I was like relapsing or anything. He drove once he drove to Danville, where I went to college. Once he drove there at he left here at 10:30 at night, got there after midnight. Maybe at 9:30, got there around midnight. And he did that simply because I had a friend who had kind of led me to believe that we were going to be doing something that night, and I was getting all excited, and I had driven 45 minutes to go do it. And anyway, I was really upset because I was basically told, go home. And it was just a misunderstanding, but I was really upset at the time. And he's like, okay, I'll be there. And he drove, and it was rainy and wet and dark, and he went there. So that's just one anecdote of many that I could tell. Oh, wow. Sorry, I didn't have the live comments on. Sorry, guys, if you ask me questions while we're doing this. I know we're going to do the Q&A after this, so I apologize if I've missed anything yet. But the word that I like to focus on a lot in marriage is together. And that's something that even back then when I was in college, and he was just out of college when we started dating, Um, Even back then, he was going above and beyond in ways that I never knew anyone would be able to, or would voluntarily go to be with me, because obviously having an eating disorder, and then just obsessive compulsive disorder, obsessing over everything in general, which those two things are inextricably linked for sure. And then of course the physical pain, I'm sure you guys can understand. We often can feel like burdens. We often, I'll say I don't want to say we, I don't want to assume about anyone, but I and some others that I have talked to about this, we can feel like burdens. We can feel like we don't have anything to contribute. We can get in those spirals like I was telling you I had last night. And one of the awesome things about being in a marriage where in sickness and in health is lived out, is the togetherness and the fact that you can face it all together. Because marriage, I'm like skipping around in my notes here because it's the way things are coming to me at this time. But there, everybody says, not everybody, but there's the quote out there saying marriage is 50-50. No, it's not always, at least not always. And then other, sometimes people like to get hyperbolic and say, no, it's 100 and 100. Each person gives 100%, which honestly, that's closer to the truth, but you can't really say 200% technically, but you know what I mean? I do way too many sidebars, and that's when I lose my train of thought. What was I talking about? Dang it, guys. Sorry. Okay, I lost that sentence, but basically, I was working my way back to the word together, because even in the very early days of dating, those 4 years, and then make sure I do my math right. We'll be married 9 years this summer. Together is the one way that we've realized we can face anything. And when I say together, it's not just Roger and me, it's Roger and me with God. And when I talk about togetherness, it's not just, living in the same house. It's not just having the certificate that says, yeah, here's your marriage certificate, you're married to this person, here's your new last name, which, by the way, I'm a fan of taking your husband's last name. I understand there are reasons people don't, but we'll talk about submitting to your husbands in a minute and how that's actually an honor. And yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute. But being together, praying together, celebrating together, laughing together, grieving together, and worshiping together. Those are just 5 of the things that came to the top of my head when I was saying, okay, what are all the things that we need to do together? Because, obviously we pray on our own as well. But when you are in a relationship, especially if you are married and you have time with your spouse, you set time aside specifically so you guys can pray together, which, by the way, Roger at the beginning, he won't care for me to tell you this. He would tell you if he were doing this himself. But when we first got married, and even the first several years, he was not someone who typically loved praying aloud. Like he always prays consistently, but he's, some people just like to pray in their mentally, try to think. I'm sorry. Instead of the screen's mocking me. It says everyone can see and hear me, and this is how I'm acting right now because I am completely losing my message. My gosh, guys, thanks for sticking with me. Okay. The end of our story is basically we've been together that long. He has never once ever had me actually worrying about if he was going to stay or if he was going to leave me. He has never given me any reason to believe that would ever be the case. He actively gives me many reasons every day to assure me that he is 100% in this, has been since the very beginning. And it's a blessing that I know not everyone is. I don't like saying the word lucky because I don't mean luck like chance luck, but sometimes you can only say the word blessing in so many forms. But, I know not everyone is as fortunate, there you go, to have this kind of marriage, especially when it's affected by chronic illness, because that's one of the ways Satan really loves to attack. If that's what you're dealing with in your marriage and in your relationship, like if you're in a relationship and you're thinking about marriage, Satan will use whatever in he can. Like for me last night and this whole week, honestly, it's been okay. Well, you're doing this conference, so I'm going to put these little thoughts in your head throughout all the week, throughout all the days of the week, to remind you that you are actually worthless. You are actually useless. You're nothing but a burden. Why would anyone want to be with you, etc. And thankfully, last night, Roger said one other thing that he said when all that was going on, that's Satan. I said, no, it's not. It's me. And of course, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I know it's Satan, but I'm not going to let him be right now because I just want to talk about how much I hate myself and how horrible I am and how I don't deserve to do this. I'm talking that quickly on this part because that's a fraction of how fast it goes through my head. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Like, we keep it real. And on our YouTube channel, we keep it real as well. We do always do our best to choose joy, but we also feel our feelings and communicate with each other and process things together. And just, this is such a phrase that we laugh about every time it's used. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Do life together. Yeah, that, I can't say that phrase without laughing, but it also works. I got stuck on together here, but basically the whole reason I've spent 21 minutes and 19 seconds here so far and haven't really gotten to the notes on the study guide is because last night was such a wake-up call to, like, there are plenty of people who, when they're in chronic illness or when a chronic illness affects their marriage, they actually do get divorced, or they're not able to find someone or start a relationship with anyone because of chronic illness or whatever any of you may be facing. Oh, son of a gun. Marriage is what brings us together today. There you go, Sarah. There's that shout out to the Princess Bride thing from yesterday. No, guys, I'm so sorry. Okay. Oh yeah. I just wanted, and I told Roger I wasn't doing this, and he suggested as well. I wanted to share that stuff with you so you guys can know. Even if you see our YouTube videos and we're laughing and we're smiling and we're, all joyful and everything, we aren't perfect. No one's perfect. No marriage is perfect because no people are perfect. So the thing that Roger pointed out about, imperfect people can still have a good marriage. It doesn't, and again, not a perfect marriage because that doesn't exist, other than the way Christ loved the church, but get to that in just a minute. But it's just, I've seen so many people older than me and younger than me who have lost their relationships, whose partners have left them, whether it was because of physical illness, whether it was because of mental illness, or whether it was because they just were looking elsewhere for things that they didn't think they were getting in their marriage. It just, I know a lot of people where that's the case. And I want to let you guys know that there are so many nights and days where I have thoughts like I did last night. And I know what the Bible says about me and my worth as a person, as a wife, as, a child of God. And I know what it says about marriage. And I know that I do my best and strive my best to live out in sickness and in health as much as I can, even though I'm pretty much the sickness part on my end. Oh gosh, hold on. Sorry, guys. I need to work on not apologizing so much too. So sorry for apologizing. But yeah, just even if there are marriages where you see things that seem, quote, perfect, for lack of a better word, from the outside, just know that there's always the reality there. And if you go through times where you are bickering with your spouse, which, let's be real, it happens. People bicker. It will happen. If you're in a relationship, you're going to argue with somebody. It just happens. We're human. It is not fun. It's not necessarily productive, but it does give you plenty of opportunities to exercise the fruits of the Spirit. But I will make a little caveat and suggest that unless you really want to have your patience tried, don't ask God to help you develop that patience fruit of the Spirit quite yet, because he will give you every opportunity to test that patience as soon as you ask for it. That was a complete side note, but I'm going to jump right in here because I don't have a smooth transition here or anything. I basically just trying to share the reality with you guys in case any of you are watching thinking, oh, well, well, this is happening in my marriage and this is happening. There is so much more, even the people that keep it real as they can online, like we try to do, there is so much more that you can't see in a vlog or in an Instagram post. So I just want to tell everybody that if you are in a marriage and you are struggling in any way, whether you're struggling together, which obviously I recommend, as far as, facing things together, not that I recommend you both decide to struggle together, but that if one of you is struggling, that you are facing it together. I just, okay, I keep trying to think of a transition, but I can't. I just want to let you know you're not alone. And I don't want you to ever get the impression from my videos that I'm saying that I'm an expert on marriage, because I'm not. We've only been married 8.5 years. And while Roger amazes me every single day, just being here, because I still can't fathom that a lot of times, why anyone would want to. He always reminds me that it's not because he feels obligated, even though it isn't, a commitment that you make when you get married. That's not why he stays. He stays because he loves me. And he didn't fall in love with the active things that I could do. He didn't fall in love with my physical appearance. Now, I do want to add to this, is physical attraction important? Absolutely. But is it the deciding factor on whether you're in a relationship? No. I just wanted to make that little note there that, obviously physical attraction will be there in a relationship, especially when you're with the person that God has intended for you to be with. But wow, that was a preposition at the end of the sentence. But oh, okay. Well, you all are getting a bunch of half sentences here. We're just going to jump into some of the scripture references. How about that? Because I wanted to note a few things here. Let's see. I'm gonna try to figure out what the most important things in here that I want to talk about are, because there's no way I'm going to have time to get through all of this now. But it was really important for me to kind of give you guys a little in-depth, I guess it ended up being, backstory and context for, we're making it together. We're not experts, but we are making it. So the fact that we have made it this long, whereas I mentioned, I know many people who were not this fortunate, that in and of itself just amazes me. And it's 100% God. And it's because we keep him at the center of everything, because we have realized that anytime that we veer off that track, things do not go well. So as far as when it comes to loving your spouse, there are some passages in the Bible that are biblical and are actually beautiful, but society likes to tell you that they're wrong and bad and not something that you actually need to listen to. And I don't want to get on an entire thing about this, because I could easily talk for a couple hours on this. But let me see, where was I here? Oh yeah, submission. That's what I was going to talk about. I do want to note, in Genesis 2, in the creation story, after God makes Adam and Adam has named all the animals, God literally says in Genesis 2:18, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him.'" So not only is marriage designed by God, but marriage is designed to be good by God. It is not good that man was alone. Therefore, what does that mean? It will be good when he has his partner to share life with, to do life with. But I just love that, God knew at the very beginning of all this, it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make him a wife. And I just love it. And it goes on in verses 21 through 24, 25 of Genesis 2. It goes on to say, "But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. Then the man said that this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." And that is a passage that you've probably heard or read a lot if you're familiar with the creation story. But I was just reading it when I was preparing for this a couple months ago, and it really struck me that God literally says it is not good that man is alone. It is not good that he doesn't have a helper. It is not good that he doesn't have a partner. And that just goes to show me that marriage is designed to be good. Marriage is something that when two Christians have made that commitment to each other, they are honoring God, just by staying married and striving to love each other as Christ loves the church, which I'm going to bring that back into the submission part there. I wanted to read that from Genesis before we got into Ephesians 5, but it's because there's some stuff that is a little repeat. It repeats the same thing as far as leaving your father and mother and cleaving to your wife. That's in there again. But I really wanted to focus starting in Ephesians 5:22, and I'm not going to read all of the verses, but it's basically the one that starts this passage. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Hey, girls, and sorry if guys are watching, but girls that are there, how's that sound to you? How society say that sounds? Because society says that's a bunch of bullcrap. Society says that it's sexist. Society says that it's archaic. And I'm telling you right now that it is absolutely none of those things. Submission, I'm trying to think of a way to say this where it will make sense. I'm not just trying to, I really like delving in depth into theology and in the roots of different words and stuff, but I'm not going to go super in depth here. I just want to say that the word submit in this context, it's actually is the Greek word that means to be subject to, or to willingly place yourself under someone else's authority. So it doesn't, I don't know, submission is a lot of times used with negative connotations, but it's actually an honor. Because it is an attitude that you live in. It's not just an act of submission. You don't, obviously, if you are living a life of submission to your husband, and then your husband is living a life of submission to God, because that is the order of things, you are honoring God, or you're honoring your husband, and you're honoring God by living out what the Bible says. And I feel like this part has gotten a little muddled up because I had like 4 different thoughts, and I was trying to get to submission here, but when they use that word in the Bible, in the verses where it's like that, it's the word they use to describe a relationship. It's the same word used to describe a relationship like the one between a military officer and his troops. It's an orderly, like I guess a godly order of how you should live. Jesus submitted to his parents, Joseph and Mary, when he was on earth. Husbands submit to God, wives submit to their husbands, children submit to their parents, all things like that. And it even goes so far, a good example, submission doesn't mean that you're saying, oh, I'm less important than you, or I'm less, I can't think of a synonym right now for important, valuable. It's not saying that any one person is more or less valuable than another. But if you think about the example of Jesus and how we're supposed to love like Christ loves, he submitted himself not only to his earthly parents when he was here under their, when they were raising him, but he submitted himself completely, willingly to the plan that God had for his life, which was the plan that makes it possible for all of us to have life. And I just think it's really interesting to think about how Jesus submitted to that plan. The Holy Spirit, in a certain way, submits to Jesus, and they both submit to God. Because, we know the Trinity is 3 in 1. I'm not going to get into all of that theology right now, because that's not the topic at hand. But I just wanted to say that gives us a perfect example of what we should follow, because we're supposed to love our husbands, or we're supposed to submit to our husbands and honor them. Hold on. I'm sorry, I thought I had my note right here. Oh, I just want to skip down that passage again, and then I'm going to come back and explain more. This is later on in Ephesians 5, somewhere in the mid-20s. I don't have the exact verse number on it right here, but this is, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. And then it goes on in the next verse to say, again, mentioning that they will leave a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. And it just said, it gets a little tricky, some of that, because, loving, if you deal with some of the struggles that I do specifically when it comes to eating disorder and body image, it's hard to think of something like, okay, well, this person's gonna love me like they love their own bodies, but they're not talking about vainly, they're talking about respecting your body enough to take care of it as the temple that it is. So I just wanted to say that, but submitting both the husband to God and the wife to the husband, it's not giving up control. I mean, it is to God, because God controls everything. Obviously, we don't actually control things. He's got it. But sorry, guys. I just wrote in my notes that, being able to submit to your husband is an honor. It is a privilege. It is a command, and it is an act of service. Because that is literally what the Bible tells us to do. And when you are in a relationship with someone who is a Christian as well, and you share faith, and you're able to discuss things together, and you are able to talk through things and have open and honest communication, then you're both working together to try to honor God in your marriage. And you'll realize that at the beginning, you may have to try to actively think, okay, I am going to make sure that I don't talk back or say anything that disrespects my husband on accident, if you can get a little hot-headed or whatever. I sometimes can be passive aggressive. I'm not proud of it. I try not to be, but it happens. And it happens to Roger too. It happens to just about everyone, I would venture to say. But if we're both striving to follow the word and to love like Christ loves, we are, by definition, submitting to God's design for our life. And I am explaining this so much more poorly than I have it actually written down. But basically, the thing I said a minute ago, submission is an attitude, and it's an attitude that we just need to try to live in all the time. And even if you're not married or in a relationship, if you are not married, you still obviously have to submit to God, because we don't just submit to husbands, we submit to husbands and to God, because we know that the husband was the God-ordained spiritual head of the household. And a note on that, when Roger and I first started dating, that topic came up. It was when I was having I think one of my gen ed religion credits classes, my spring of my freshman year. But he made the statement to the effect of well, I can understand how, he obviously my dad for an example, because that's one person said, I can look at your dad and say, yeah, he's like that, but I don't see myself ever being able to be someone who can say I'm the spiritual head of the household, and I just don't know the Bible that well. And he's been a Christian since he was in middle school, but as a lot of us do, it doesn't, I was going to say, he was doubting the fact, I guess he used to doubt the fact that is something that he would be able to do, just because it seemed like this standard. I don't know why I put quote, it is a standard, but I mean, it seemed like a subjective standard that was just there, that he didn't necessarily think that he could meet. And I just want to tell you guys that I talked about praying together earlier, and how he also, when we were first together, he wasn't a huge fan of praying out loud. Over the past 3 or 4 months alone, there have been times where I have been the one that has been completely just wanting to give up, laying here in pain with anxiety, restlessness, self-hatred. Even though I know what the Bible says, I do have that disorder in my brain that tells me I'm not worth anything, and it doesn't matter what triggers it. But thankfully, Roger is able to be that voice like he was last night and say, listen, you have a message, And whatever you say is what God's going to be, or is whatever you end up saying is what God wants you to be communicating. But I know that this is Satan, and I know you can't see it right now, but I'm here with you in sickness and in health. And that also means tough love sometimes, because open communication doesn't always mean just saying things that sound good to the other person or to yourself. It means being vulnerable, opening yourself up to someone not being completely receptive, maybe into a specific way that you like try to present something. So sorry. I knew it was gonna be rough on my brain, but I did not know it was gonna be quite this rough. What was I talking about? Goodness, guys, I'm sorry. I was talking about. Oh yeah, I was talking about communication. I've only got about 5 minutes left here, so like I said at the beginning, I'm sorry this isn't exactly the stuff that was on the study guide, but as I explained at the beginning, there is a reason for that today, because this is the stuff that was put on my heart more than anything else as of this morning at 2:30 a.m. when I awoke with that headache and just lay there saying, Jesus, 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 in my head, because if I said it out loud, I would, it would hurt my head more. But anyway, that some of the things, I mentioned how Satan attacks in sickness and in health when chronic illness affects the lives and marriages of God's children. So I want to kind of go through some things that we try to keep in mind and practice so that we're still able to enjoy life and enjoy marriage together. And I'm really gonna have to try to speed through these, but I can also, if there's anything that I didn't cover that was on the study guide, or anything that you wanted to know more about, we're doing a Q&A right after this. So I will get to all of the questions that we have time to be able to get to, because I know this has kind of been all over the place. But one of the big things that we do is, focus on what you can do together each day. Right now, for the past few months, my body has been in this clock where it doesn't really function until afternoon. Sometimes not till 2 or 3 o'clock. And I have to keep I've got blackout curtains in here, turn the lights off and everything. But I mentioned all that just to say that I know all of you understand how overwhelming it can get. The pain, the uncertainty, the stress, the anxiety, being overwhelmed with everything, just in general. It's very, very important to focus on the things that you can do, because let's just be honest, when you have chronic illness, some of the things that you did before you were affected as you are now with chronic illness are things you can't necessarily do anymore. And it is super easy as humans to start thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. This list keeps getting longer of things that I cannot do. But you focus on what you can do together, even if it's watching an episode of Star Trek or anything on Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, game shows, whatever, or just sitting and talking, working crossword puzzles. We do crossword puzzle races sometimes. That's okay, guys, sorry about that. My computer, I guess, disconnected from the internet, but it looks like it was still running the clock there. So hopefully that didn't completely screw things up. But I was just talking about things that you can do. Laugh together as much as you can. Laughter, it's not just something people say when they say laughter is the best medicine. Laughter is literally something that can make you feel better physically and emotionally. Even if you don't feel like laughing at the beginning, you kind of make sure that you're making yourself laugh, and then you're going to feel like laughing, because laughing in and of itself is kind of funny. But even if all you can do is take a nap together one day, that's still doing something together, and that's something you can do together while being together. So I think that's pretty awesome. I wrote a note down in the study guide about love languages, and I wrote the book in the notes there as well, the 5 love languages. I don't have time to go over all of those right now, but I do just want to note that they all, when you're learning your spouse's love language, it requires communication and trial and error to work, again, together, to figure out what ways you can meet their love language, whichever it is, or whichever one it is, whichever love language they have. Another thing that I try to do is to greet Roger with a smile as often as I can. And It's easy to forget that when the pain is very high. But when he comes home from work, I really want to do my best to be able to smile, even if I'm in pain, because I want him to come home and be able to be happy when he comes home, as far as like not have to think, when I get, okay, I just saw I'm at 45 minutes, so I'm going to have to cut this off in just a second. Let me finish this thought. Um, Greeting your spouse with a smile, or just smiling at them, or letting them know how much you appreciate them, how much you love them, how much you recognize that they do, even if they don't talk about doing it. Um, just making an effort to smile and encourage them, even if you're the one dealing with illness. Any effort that you can make to help encourage them is beyond worth it, because anytime that you are able to, you know, be a shoulder for them to lean on, or serve them in any way, I'm sorry, meet any of their needs. This is, what keeps buzzing here? Sorry, I thought that was the chat here on the thing. I'm all over the place, guys. And I'm going to end the talk right here, but avoid complaining for complaining's sake, which is another something that can happen, not just to chronically ill people, but humans in general, because complaining just for the sake of complaining and throwing pity parties just adds stress to your relationship. And that does not mean that you have to hide your feelings at all, but it again comes back to communication together, discussing them together, taking them to God in prayer together. Um, and, like I did say, marriage isn't always 50-50. Sometimes you may not feel like you're able to give 10% even, but you'd be surprised if you're not married yet. I think you'll be surprised once, if you do marry, do end up getting married to the person that God intends for you. If marriage is in your future, then you will realize that, which part was I talking about? You'll realize that if it's a time when you feel like you don't have enough percentage to give, God fills in the rest. So sometimes it might be 90-10, sometimes it might be 50-50, sometimes it might be 10-90 from the other direction. But that's just something to keep in mind, because I don't know, I just feel like it's important. I've gone 2 minutes over time here, so I just want to read a couple things. Pray for your spouse daily. And the important thing is, you're not praying to change them, but you're praying to be the best spouse that you can be. You're praying for guidance to be the best spouse that you can be, to meet their needs. You're not saying, God, please make them better. You're saying, make me better so I can serve them better, so our relationship can be better and grow better together again. That's a J.J. Heller song, by the way. And the big thing that I'll end on, even though there's a lot more, is don't fall into the trap of comparison. And I know that's something we've all heard, especially in the era of social media, in just about every aspect of life. But specifically in marriage, especially if you're with chronic illness, because I am now 31. Roger is 36. Can I do math? Yeah, 36. And, we thought we were going to have a family by now. But when I graduated college, 3 months after I graduated college, I had to go to eating disorder treatment. And then in another year and a half into marriage is when all of this major chronic illness stuff started. And again, all of the details about both my eating disorder journey in detail and the whole health journey are on the YouTube channel, so I'm not going to try to say it here. But we just don't your journey together, your marriage is your marriage. It's not anybody else's marriage. And it hurts. I'm not going to lie. It hurts when I see people that were my friends, or people that I know are my age, who seem to have it all together, even though I know they don't really, but they're able to have children and have a job. And I didn't really want to end on this kind of lower note, but I thought it was important to bring that up, because that is something that we deal with. We face the possibility of childlessness, not just physically, but depending on how things work out in the next several years, it might not be an option for us. And that's what we both have always longed for more than anything. So I also want to encourage all of you that might be in that position, don't give up. And also just know that if that's the biggest desire of your heart, as far as starting your life with your spouse and starting a family, and if for some reason it doesn't happen, there are so many ways that you can serve God that will end up being just as fulfilling as you think it is going to be. having a child of your own. So I just wanted to put that there because it is a reality for people with chronic illness. A lot of us physically can't have children, or it would be super, super risky because of genetic conditions that you could pass along or anything else, or just the inability to care for another human being because we can't even care for ourselves. So just, I know I was all over the place in this talk part of it, but you know, the bottom line of it is we have to do things together. Marriage is a together activity. We have to love each other as Christ loves the church. And we always have to remember the ultimate caregiver, which of course is God, because literally everyone needs his care all the time, every day. Everyone all the time needs God's care and love and grace. So I know there are like 3 different thoughts there at the end, but I think I'm going to try. I've gone 5 minutes over. I'm so sorry about that, but I'm going to try to, I'll go ahead and end this now, the actual talk part. But I do want to go on record saying that obeying your husband is an honor. When I was talking about all the submissions stuff, there's so much about that. There are also resources that I could recommend for that if you want to ever chat with me, or talk sometime like in the DM or whatever. But for the talk, I just we'll just end on staying together in every way, laughing together, crying together, smiling together, grieving together, etc. But always keeping God there too, because you can't really be together on the deepest spiritual connection level unless God's there as well and is at the forefront of it. So that's where I'm going to end this now.
Well, thank you so much, Becca. That was so encouraging. And I'm not married, but to me, just hearing your guys' story and how, you love each other, that's encouraging to me because,
Thank you.
there's times as a chronically ill girl that I wonder, is there anyone out there who will
Yeah.
love like that or that,
Yeah.
whatever. But hearing your story is a blessing to me.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. That's I know it is something that a lot of people face, even if they're not married yet. So I know you're not alone in that.
Well, if you guys want to go ahead and ask any questions that you have, we have some time for a Q&A. If you have any questions for Becca about her YouTube channel, about marriage and illness, about anything, you can
About
go
basketball, about
ahead.
figure skating. No, literally
Yep.
anything. Just I haven't, like I think I mentioned at the beginning, I was not able to, or at some point near the beginning, I was not able to keep up with the live comments, or else I would have lost my train of thought many more times than this. So I think you were keeping track of some of the questions that may have come through, maybe, or some, or
Yeah, I think that most of the comments so far have been just agreeing with you or sharing people's stories. Haley
yeah.
Hudson said, "Love languages are awesome," and she's going to be touching on it in her session as well, which is the next one. So you guys
That's,
can stick
oh,
around
that's so perfect.
about
That's
that.
perfect timing. Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. Awesome, Haley, because obviously I could not get in depth into it right here with all of the other stuff. So that's awesome. Um,
Yes. So here's your first
mhm.
question. Bethany says, "What inspired you to start a YouTube channel?"
Okay. I'm trying to think of a way. I have always had a passion for sharing my story, my journey, my testimony, because through the different struggles, mental illness, physical illness that I've faced throughout life, it's been others sharing their story that is similar to mine. Oh, whoops, there goes my earbud. Stories that are similar to mine that give me assurance that I'm not alone. I'm not going through this. I'm not the only person going through this. And there are so many things where if there was not somebody that was like vlogging on their YouTube channel, whatever, if this YouTube channel didn't exist, which I'll go ahead and say it out there, I'm not affiliated with the Fry Life, but most of you probably at least know who Peter and Mary Fry are. I just mentioned them as an example because when you do see that other couples are making it, you realize, okay, well, we can share this because they've helped me realize we're not alone with what we're going through, because they're just sharing their life, literally. So that's what we wanted to do. And the channel actually started off with mostly eating disorder recovery content because, fun fact, my very first video ever on the channel, I filmed the very first time that I was able to not step on a scale for the first time, or first thing in the morning for the first time in what at the time had been 12 years. So that was kind of like, immediately when that happened, I had a victory that day. I'm like, okay, I posted it out on Snapchat at the time, which I don't even use anymore. But I'm like, okay, I'll just add that into YouTube video. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna record my first video. But it all stemmed from other people sharing their stories, letting me know I'm not alone. That helps me just have hope and then be able to have the strength to hopefully do the same for other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sharing your story is so powerful, and several speakers have talked about that. But yeah, you guys sharing can be really impactful.
Yeah, I'm a fan because and I've heard I know many others say the exact same thing, but if any part of what I'm going through, what we're going through as a couple, if any part of that can help any one person in any one way, all of it is worth it. So, that's something that I know, especially to people who maybe aren't Christian, that might sound cliche, like, oh, Christians are going to say that, but it's so very true. So it's once you have that perspective, for me at least, once I was able to really gain that perspective, it helps me in my day to day when I feel like, well, what in the world is this purpose for? Because I have been in this refining fire long enough.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess that's where I go with that one.
Cool.
Oh.
There's another question. Anna asks, you mentioned OCD, and I have struggled with that as well. I'd love to know if you have any tips with that.
I do. Yes. First of all, I want to tell you that I'm going to be praying for you because a lot of people don't realize how debilitating OCD can be. Society and culture in the media, the typical portrayals that you see are very stereotypical of, washing your hands or checking your locks on your door or keeping your room neat or your pencils in color order and I just want to say that if you like to be neat and orderly and tidy and organized, that is so awesome, but it doesn't mean you have OCD. You could have obsessive compulsive tendencies. You could just really like to be neat. The thing about OCD, and this is for general people before I answer your question specifically, Anna. Trying to think of the best way to word this. Gosh, I'm having a really hard time trying. I've never really, I guess, thought explaining what OCD, I mean, other than scientific definition, but okay, let's think about this. How many times have you heard someone say the phrase, I'm so OCD?
Mm-hmm.
I am so OCD. Well, let's think about what that's actually saying. And I think my mom and sister are in the chat as well, so they know exactly what I'm getting ready to say. But you cannot be obsessive compulsive disorder. You can't be a disorder. You can have a disorder. You can be obsessive compulsive. But if you tell me you are OCD, unless I know that it's actually something you struggle with and you just slipped up and said that, chances are you don't really have OCD. And I'm not trying to minimize anyone that deals with even the tendencies because they can be debilitating as well. I want to go on track saying that. I'm not trying to dismiss anyone. It's just something that is so cavalierly said in media and online and everything. Oh, I'm so OCD. I had to straighten my room, and oh, look how neat it is. And just, it's so much more than that. And it's so much more than the stereotypical compulsions and stuff. It's the obsessive thoughts of, if I don't perform this compulsion, someone in my family will die, which I'm convinced that saying the year number 2012 plus one, which I mentioned I can't say those last two digits earlier, I slipped up and said that one time when it was that year, and my OCD convinced me that that's the reason my great aunt died. So just using that as an example to say, I understand how severely debilitating it can be. And one of the best resources I would recommend to anyone who is struggling with OCD, or even if you're not diagnosed and you do have these repetitive thoughts, or you're just ruminating on these negative obsessive thoughts or whatever, there's a book called Brain Lock. And right now, I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but I could share about it maybe in the chat on the channel, on the Slack channel or something. But it's Brain Lock, and I think the subtitle is something like Freeing Yourself from Obsessive Compulsive Behavior or something. And it's a really concrete, easy way to kind of do your own exposure and response prevention therapy, which is super anxiety provoking, but also like the most effective proven method for conquering obsessions and compulsions. So I recommend that book for sure, as far as like resources like that. And then I just recommend finding, I don't know if you, if other people know that it's something you struggle with, but if it is something that at least some people in your life know, it never hurts to reach out to them and say, listen, I'm struggling with this, or even there may be times where I'm struggling with this in the future. Would you be able to just be here for me? Whether I need to talk to you and say, I love you 25 times. Why would I do that? I don't do anything in odd numbers. 22 times, 8 times. That's the best number. Um, anyway, point being, having a network of people that just know, even if they don't struggle with it and they don't understand it like as deeply as you do, being someone who deals with it, having people there, even if it's online, if it's family, if it's anyone that is just there, that just be there to listen and not necessarily offer, well, why don't you just do this? And oh, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to be anxious about that. That kind of stuff. We know that's not helpful. So exposure and response prevention therapy. That was all a long way of me saying basically that's the most effective type of therapy, and it is something that you can do on your own, even though it is very difficult and anxiety provoking, but also worth it. And that book that I mentioned helps a lot with very easy, specific steps that you can take on that.
Thank you for sharing that. She commented in the stream that she's also experienced the mixed message and all of that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We have another question. Kenna asks, I would really love to direct message you because I have a lot of similar challenges. Do you have an Instagram or account or Facebook page that I could use to message you directly?
I do. And if I'm able to here, I will try to type in my Instagram name. Oh, I don't think I can comment on this myself. Okay. But I don't think it was on Study Guide because I actually had changed my Instagram handle. It is now my joyful reality, but there's an underscore, like my underscore joyful underscore reality it is you do have to request to follow and stuff, but I will. I mean, we're talking right here. I'll recognize you, and definitely you can reach out to me. I'm always open to answer DMs. I may not always be able to answer them that day, but I will always answer eventually.
That was my underscore joyful underscore reality?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just put that in the chat so everyone can see it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to type it, but I don't think it would let me type in the live. So
yeah, don't worry about it. Also, everyone, I put the link to Becca's website down in the description of this video. So that should have some of the contact thing or some way to find social media. So.
Yeah, it's on there. It's all there somewhere. I'm just making sure okay, you know what? I'm glad I checked this. I'm doubting myself. It's actually my joyful reality. So, okay. Guys, take those underscores, change them to periods. That's what it is. I'm sorry, I told you the wrong thing. But yeah, that's what it is. So, but yeah, you can obviously definitely just reach out to me there, and I'll make sure I answer as soon as I'm able.
Yeah, Becca's an awesome person. You should definitely go follow her stuff.
That is way too nice of a word to describe me, but thank you. Pretty awesome yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Cindy just said it.
That's my mom.
There we go.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Kat.
So if you guys have any last questions, we have a few more minutes. So any questions for Becca?
Yeah, like I said, I know the talk was kind of all over the place here and there because there were just so many things I wanted to hit on, and then had the whole thing this morning of, oh my gosh, everything that I typed, I have to now try to condense that all because I have to share this other part of the message. So if there's anything that you just need clarity on, or anything that I didn't touch on, and it's something that I'm able to answer, I will definitely answer it. And if you can't think of it right now, like Kenna was asking, you can also feel free to message me on Instagram. And even, like I said, even if it takes me a little while, I will eventually be able to get back to you. Sometimes it might be in a voice message if I can't type, but I will always get back to you.
I love doing voice messages when I can't, I don't have the brain power to type. I will just send that to people, and it really is a helpful way to communicate.
I agree. It's when it first became an option within the messaging app on iPhone specifically, I think I've probably worn my entire family and friend circle out, because sometimes they'll get 15-minute long voice messages because I just need to talk, but I can't talk on the phone. I can't type at all. But they are very helpful, though.
Yeah. I have a few spoony friends of mine who we do that a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's basically, me too. Same.
Haley says handy life hack.
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you what, though, using Siri or whatever voice to text thing that you may have, something like that, you got to be able to think fast and not go with brain fog. Because if you're trying to say something, she'll cut you off. You don't get to finish your sentence. But
Yeah, I'm on an Android, so no Siri for me.
and I wasn't sure what's. Oh, I know there are a few different names out there. As Google, I think it was Cortana, something like that. I don't know, but
yeah, there's a few different options.
yeah. So once, it just I don't remember why I was talking about. Oh, brain fog, typing, voice messaging, all that stuff. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point though with all of the speakers here. If you think of a question later or you're watching the recorded version of this and you want to ask us about something, just reach out. We sometimes our illness means that we can't get to you right away or we're busy, but we would love to talk to you. And also, if you look, Becca was mentioning the Slack community. There's a private conference Slack community, which you can find below the link to the conference website. That's where you can find the community and just get to connect with other people or just ask the community questions, ask individual speakers questions. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
had never used Slack before, and it's a really awesome way that they have that platform set up. So learn something new.
Yeah. Well, it looks like there are no more questions at the moment,
All right.
so we're going to say goodbye and move on to the next session. Like I said, Haley Hudson, who you guys have seen in the live comments a lot, is going to be speaking at the next session, talking about relationships with people who are not chronically ill. So
And I have
make
a feeling
sure,
that's going to be awesome
yes,
itself. So I'll be tuning into that.
yeah. So make sure you can go to that if you look at the link in the description of this video. But before that, we have a giveaway because we're doing a giveaway at the end of every session.
Yep.
And so for this session, since it was about in love and in health and
Yeah.
sickness and health, goodness,
Yeah.
I'll get there eventually. We have a I Take You in Sickness and Health package set from Chronic Joy Ministries that was
Cool.
donated.
That's
So
awesome.
it's a package set, so there's one for each spouse, and the winner of that is drumroll, it's choosing a random winner for me. Oh, Elizabeth Emerson. So congratulations,
There you go.
Elizabeth. We will contact you with more information about it soon. So if you haven't entered the giveaway, also link down there. So yeah. So we will see you in the next session.
And I just want to quickly